the Poetry Center, bringing poetry to Paterson since 1980 at Passaic County Community College.
I'm glad to welcome you all here today. I'm Maria Mazziotti-Gillen, and I'm the Executive Director of the Poetry Center and the Cultural Affairs Department at Passaic County Community College. I want to thank a few people. One, I'd want to thank Susan Balick, who is the director of the Cultural Affairs Department, and who came to me 14 years ago and has been just brilliant in picking up all the things because I would get an idea and I'd start another program. So that would require more grants and more reports and the whole thing. And Susan Balick has picked that up with amazing speed and is just wonderful. I really couldn't do this whole program without her. She's also in good physical condition, which makes a big difference. But anyway, I want to thank her, make sure that I really thank her so it shows up on our YouTube page, because I actually couldn't do any of this without her, and she's been enormously helpful. The other person I really want to thank is Cynthia Pagan, who is my new assistant, and she took over from Smith to Desai, who was here for 20-some years, 21 years. But she's so great, Cynthia. She's really learned, she's picked up everything, and mostly I say, well, go do that. I don't explain to her how to do it. I don't get her any, and she's picked it all up. So it's wonderful to have such good people. And I've been very fortunate in all the years that I've run this. That first I had T.J. Nike, who was my secretary for over 20 years. And then his daughter was my secretary for another 20 years. And I now have Cynthia, and I have Sue Balick, and Val Hobson. And so, you have to count yourself lucky if you have people who are willing to take on the jobs that keep a program like this going and are willing to really put themselves into it. For me, this is my baby, the whole thing, every program I thought of. But I couldn't keep doing it by myself. So this is so wonderful that I've had this help. Also, I have to thank Steve Rose, who's Dr. Steve Rose, who is the president of Passaic County Community College, who has really supported me in everything that I've done. Every time I wanted to start a new program, he helped me find the funding for it, and he's lets us use this beautiful building, turns it into a cultural center. For 11 years, I was behind a bookshelf in the library. That was where my office was. It was not the most private place to have an office. I have a big mouth, so it must have been really disturbing for people in the library. So I'm pleased to have this wonderful building to use for our program, poetry readings, and other programs that we do. I also want to thank the New Jersey State Council on the Arts and the National Endowment for the Arts for their financial support of the program. And I want to thank our individual donors and members for the Poetry Center and people who left us money in their wills. We need every cent we can get at this point. And of course, with the situation the way it is, we're really kind of uncertain what the money situation is going to be. So we have to try to make sure we're identifying additional means of support. Anyway, today I'm really pleased to welcome Maya Popa and Kwame Dawes to read for us, and I think it's going to be really exciting reading and an experience that you won't forget. Maya Popa is the author of two collections. Wound is the Origin of Wonder, W.W. Norton, 2022, named one of The Guardian's recent best books of poetry, and American Faith Sarabande, 2019, runner-up in the Kathryn A. Morton Prize, judged by Ocean Vuong, and winner of the North American Book Award Prize. Her poems and essays appear in the Atlantic, The Nation, Poetry, the Paris Review, the Times Literary Supplement, and elsewhere. She holds a PhD on the role of wonder in poetry from Goldsmiths, University of London, where she was a recipient of the English Department bursary for exceptional merit. She was previously a Clarendon. Can you believe this little skinny young girl has done all these things? She was previously a Clarendon Scholar at Oxford University, where she earned an MA, and is a Veterans Fellow at NYU, where she earned an MFA. Her newsletter, Poetry Today, is one of Substack's best-selling featured publications. Since 2018, she has served as the poetry editor of Publishers Weekly and director of creative writing at the Nightingale-Bamford School. She teaches advanced poetry at NYU. Let's welcome Maya Popa.
Maria, that made me laugh so hard. Thank you. Thank you so much to Maria for that introduction, and thank you to the college for having me, and thank you all for being here. It's such a delight, and I'm so pleased to be reading with Kwame Dawes, who's a writer I really, really admire, so this is just a treat all around. So, you know, each of these books was written under duress. So the first book was written, I would say the majority of the poems are sort of after Trump round 1. It's kind of grim to say that there's a Trump round 2. And then the second book was written under, during the pandemic. So I don't know, you know, buckle up is, maybe Kwame will have some happier poems after. I'm gonna just keep track of time. Okay, 111, I got this. So I'm gonna start with the title poem, American Faith, and we're gonna have two political poems and then one sort of less so, and then we'll pivot to the pandemic. Aren't you glad? American Faith. In Buddhism, difficult people are thought to be a gift. This explains why I am not a Buddhist. I love the glib, slick farce of hard-heartedness, though I've held my human head in my human hands so it would not succumb to language. It was Earth that taught me names for all the planets, how to look at an angle for the hummingbird, dark satellite of sugar in the blossom's mouth. I could picture that vast absence of us, moons spinning coolly in unscripted pasts. But when I try to imagine our president, understanding imagination is the basis of all faith, I suffocate on hatred's loneliness. I can't stand the unity of my own hands, how no part leads the writing of a word. But this too is no faith that can be held, scalds without tributary purpose. Like something held to the light by its edges, I see the long years ahead of me, full of the voices of friends' children's children. I want a kind of betterness, want it desperately. Is that faith? While the days, impatient, fresh beasts appeal to me, you are here now. You must believe in something. Oh, friends, this is that awkward moment where you have to decide, are you going to clap after every poem? Are you going to sit in a loaded silence? But you have to decide, because then if not, it gets really awkward. So I think we've chosen like if clapping, snapping, we can do it, but we just got to do it. Okay. American Cowboy. This poem's about Roy Moore. Do we remember this loser who came on stage at one of his rallies or something and brought a gun? And said, and raised it and said, I believe in the Second Amendment. And it was, you know, his constituency was swooning, like how exciting. And it quotes from Sylvia Plath's poem, Daddy. Do we know this poem?
Yes.
Every woman loves a fascist, the boot in the face. American Cowboy. When the politician takes his gun out on stage, we're meant to feel wonder he hasn't shot us, grateful to leave with our lives. It nears the feeling maybe in Plath's Daddy, the boot in the face, when the white man walks on stage in cowboy boots and hat, a shorthand. But I don't wish his body near my own. Hear it, don't mistake terror for adoration. There's no plot in the old Western, only masculine delirium and the promise, part childish, part challenge of frontier. Gold humming in the nearest river, vigil of buffalo grazing through the night, and the tumbleweed, a complicated thing gaining momentum around an emptiness. Truly, inside is nothing, and it protects that nothingness that built it, this its language, its politic. What will it take to start over again with a myth we might perhaps outlive? It's the cowboy who the cowboy saves. Thanks, Ben. Okay. So there's a series of poems in this book called Blank Has Been Canceled. And so it was a game I played. And if you're poets, which most of you are, I'm sure, you know that part of what we're doing is just trying to trick ourselves into not starting from scratch, because the blank page is very intimidating. So my way of doing that in both books has been to have series poems that have the same title. So essentially, if there's spillover from one poem and I can't figure out what to do with those lines, I just start another poem with those lines. It's almost like a project that prevents you from feeling like you don't have anything when you're starting. So there are a few poems. This one's called The Bees Have Been Canceled. Then there's The Government Has Been Canceled. The Return to Nature has been canceled. The Color Wheel has been canceled. So I just kept thinking, okay, so if we take all color away, what happens? And if we take the government away, what happens? And then if we take, so it was just a kind of exercise in imagination, but this is the first one that came out of this. And I started this poem after reading an article about the dwindling number of bees and being very distraught. But these poems precede the cancel culture movement. So people always go, oh, is this about cancel culture? It's not. Like, they're from 2014. So I just always add that as an addendum. The bees have been canceled. Never again the humming saddled flowers. Never the blind oath by a velveteen prisoner. Never the yellow hula-hooped in black little engine left running late into the darkness. Oh, how they were charming, clever monographs. Sunlight couldn't save them from the angel of extinction. Virgil said they swell with nectar's tilted knowledge. I don't know what to believe. Maybe they tired of being addicts, clover honey, garbage honey, accidental ice cream honey, ransomed stamen, sweet sinful, will do anything for honey. Maybe they caught fevers at midnight with no one there to hold their stingers, no fat queen to press a cold compress. How will we currency honey from wildflowers, that liquid of languages? How pollinate in the bee's electrostatic absence? How will the bellbirds take it, the Canterbury birds? Who will cast the last skeleton in amber? I'll miss the noise, the palimpsestic clamor, soft shock of discovering a hive under your roof. The lull as each integer walked its body over a blossom, then flew away with its instructions. Okay, one last poem from that calamity. Yard sale. Yard sales are so weird. Raise your hand if you stop at them. They're so much fun, right? You just don't know what you're gonna, there's something very there's something also very intimate about it, right? Because everyone's like, here, please buy my toaster. And you're like, I'm not sure, but like, It's kind of strange. I'm in your hall. Like, it's very, very odd impulse. I don't know. I suppose were cavemen doing this? I don't know. Maybe it's gone on as long as we have. I'm not sure. Yard sale. Books, aromatherapy kits, and sheet music. Objects that have lived in the presence of people and will need new owners to remain relevant. The cups would like to be adopted as a set. The spaghetti measurer is skittish around children. Someone has left a newspaper balancing between two levels of a tiered table. The front page glitters with bad news. Anything good is tucked into metaphor. A roller coaster of emotions later, the dog returns unharmed and the family resumes its battles against the perils on page 1. No one wants to buy anything. They want to peer into each other's lives, press their mouths to strangers' cups and lift affinities, a few words of Swedish, a talent for Sudoku. I lay the news by the music and patchouli to see if that will unbully it. Someone organizes hurt by color, the blue table dark as the underbelly of an avalanche. There I place an orange napkin, a copy of Keats, and hope for a handover of idle goodness, a share of warmth stored in our sugars passed through the vellum of our touch. At home, an ant drowns in my espresso. I hold a vigil. I can still hear the voice of my teacher reading the part of the ant in a picture book. We're counted on to make a safety of our minds, a world out of objects shared between us. I kiss the cup held by my two hands. My mouth might mend a stranger's mouth. Thank you, friends. Okay. So this is Wound is the Origin of Wonder, and I was writing it in the pandemic, and I was writing it as I was doing research for my doctorate on essentially the word wonder and the role that wonder plays in poetry, and it's from the Old English for Wunder, thought to be a cognate with the German Wunde or wound. So essentially the origin of wonder, which we consider to be this experience that we all want to have, we sort of semantically, like, it's similar to awe, right? Or not surprise, but amazement. So we think of it as positive, but really the etymology suggests that to feel wonder is to be breached. It's to be surpassed by the experience. And so in that way, it's closer to the sublime, which is the beautiful and the terrible. That's what sublimity is, right? It's those two things. So I was very interested in writing about experiences of wonder, but about the foil of wonder being grief or fear or pain. And so that allowed me to write a lot of love poems and a lot of other stuff. Essentially, it was another way to continue to prime the pump, to continue to have enough to say for a whole book. Dear life, I can't undo all I have done to myself, what I have let an appetite for love do to me. I have wanted all the world, its beauties and its injuries. Some days I think that is punishment enough. Often I received more than I'd asked, which is how this works. You fish in open water, ready to be wounded on what you reel in. Throwing it back was a nightmare. Throwing it back and seeing my own face as it disappeared into the dark water. Catching my tongue suddenly on metal, spitting the hook in my open palm. Dear life, I feel that hook today most keenly. Would you loosen the line? You'll listen if I ask you, if you are the sort of life I think you are. A quick story about that poem, which is that it was run in The Guardian, and The Guardian has a comment section. So most journals don't have a comment section. So the last thing you should ever do is read a comment section. It's like really 101 here. So of course I read the comment section, and the comment that was like trending most at the top was someone saying, it makes sense that she writes about fishing because she's Romanian, and Romanians have draconian fishing laws. Like, they have one of the strictest fishing laws. And he was like, so she's just like really upset about fishing. So he needed an exercise, he needed a craft class in metaphor. But you know, I'm just the fisher poet fighting the good fight for the amendment of Romanian fishing laws. Disquiet a taxonomy. I want to love someone I worry is me, though it's just as often you I worry I love, when I mistake the spoken for the intuited, the ice for the fish beneath. How the Buddhist described desire's oculus, how the artist picked a flower from a vase and used it to paint flowers, fills me with worry. The difference between irony and allegory, telling mountain from molehill or landmine. I worry I'll only have words with which to tell the story of what mostly occurred outside language, like a doctor treating for the wrong ailment, which doctors often do, much to my worry. It's like, thanks. It's like a sun where your voice lives in memory, like moonlight on water, the mixed simile worries. Most people are dreaming of someone else. It's what keeps the jukebox playing all night. I'm worried Willie Nelson was right. So those last lines, most people are dreaming of someone else. It's what keeps the jukebox playing all night, or Willie Nelson's. Okay, let's see how we're doing on time. How are you all doing? Good? You're good? Okay. So in Edinburgh, there's a museum of childhood. Let's just sit with that. There's a museum of childhood. And I don't think that for a poet there could be a more like immediately appealing museum. I guess like the Museum of Time more broadly, but the Museum of Childhood. So of course it ended up in a poem. And I was thinking of a friend whose upbringing in Gloucestershire was like extremely strange. She had a moat. I mean, these like dilapidated farmhouses in England, this is not uncommon. They had a moat but no heating. So there was just no heating, but they had a moat to get to the house. And there were whole like portions of the property that were never used. So it's just like overtaken by wildlife. So I was thinking of his childhood, and then I was thinking how so many of us, you know, unless you're born in major cities, so much of the trajectory is being born in green spaces and having land and room for the imagination to do its job of writing poems, and then moving into very small, compressed spaces to work and to spend the rest of your life. You know, it's not really a trajectory that seems intuitive to me for poetry, but for many of us, it's what happens, right? In the Museum of Childhood. Oh, and it also quotes Philip Larkin, who's a poet I love, but whose life we needn't emulate because he was kind of a dick. Okay, in the Museum of Childhood, it's yours I remember, and Larkin's, who called his a forgotten boredom. How it might just as well have never happened, though it did once. It happened once, to you, in a house with a moat and no heating, twin voices boiling over in the kitchen below. You'd survive it all, which is to say, forsake those days turning in you like a pinwheel still, that base from which language understands its failure. There was time to be a part and still a part of something human before the usual forfeiture of green to cities, days blunted by the millstone of duty. Now the hours blink back with the eyes of roadside animals, and the discs shrink with not enough of anything worth keeping. You could weep for all you did not know then was a blessing, the voices hurt and angry but living nonetheless, the highway throbbing with its dreamed of passages. The museum makes converts out of visitors. I lug youth's icons inside me and believe we bear the loss we caused by our arriving. We were never loved by anything the way tomorrow loved us then. Thanks. Okay. So just a few more. we'll be on our way. So this is the oldest poem in the book, and it was written during Hurricane Sandy, which is, I think, the first time that New Yorkers were made to contend with the reality of the climate catastrophe. I mean, it was certainly the first time that Wall Street came to a halt, which means a lot for Manhattan. And I remember at NYU, all of the students were shepherded into one main building, and they were sleeping on cots because all of the electricity had gone out, which of course was a risk factor for colleges. And I think, again, it was the first time that New Yorkers, you know, who don't have tornado season or hurricane season really kind of woke up to how bad this was going to be, and how bad the future was going to be if we didn't do something. So there's a line in here that has aged rather strangely. So I sort of started thinking, if the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse are indeed upon us, like, what's the thing I would really not want? And so there's a line here: anything but illness, I beg the plagues. And then, of course, a few years later, we would have the pandemic. So it's always a strange thing to see your pleas cataloged and then see how they came to pass or didn't come to pass. Letter to Noah's wife. And so this plays on the Genesis, Noah's Ark story. Letter to Noah's wife. You are never mentioned on Ararat or elsewhere, but I know a woman's hand in salvation when I see it. Lately, I'm torn between despair and ignorance. I'm not a vegetarian. Shop plastic, use an air conditioner. Is this what happens before it all goes fluvial? Do the selfish grow self-conscious by the withering begonias? Lately, I worry every black dress will have to be worn to a funeral. New York, eroded filigree. Anything but illness, I beg the plagues, but shiny crows or nuclear rain, not a drop in London, May through June. I bask in the wilt by golden hour light. Lately, only lately, it is late, tucking our families into the safety of the past. My children, will they exist by the time it's irreversible? Will they live astonished at the thought of ice not pulled from the mouth of a machine? Which parent will be the one to break the myth the Arctic wasn't Sisyphus's snowy hill? Noah's wife, I'm wringing my hands, not knowing how to know and move forward. Was it you who gathered flowers once the earth had dried? How did you explain the light to all the animals? Mm-hmm. Okay, so I'm just going to end on one poem about, there are some poems about the pandemic, but we needn't go there. And so this one is about Julian of Norwich, who's my favorite medieval mystic. I know you all have a favorite medieval mystic. And she's best known for what Eliot quotes in the 4 quartets: all shall be well, and all shall be well, and all manner of things shall be well. Do we know this line? You may have seen it embroidered on a cushion once or twice. But she also has this beautiful moment in the Revelations, her book that she wrote when she came out of a coma. So she fell into a coma in her 30s, and Jesus came to her and gave her these visions, and then she recorded them, and kind of amazingly, she wasn't like burned at the stake for being a witch. She was actually very respected, and people would sort of make these pilgrimages to go see Julian of Norwich, and she was allowed to continue living with her cat and just being herself. And she's sort of the first English woman writer that we have. She's a contemporary of Chaucer, so she's sort of the bedrock of writing in in modern English. So and there's another moment where Jesus comes, and I'm not going to spoil it, but essentially he comes and visits her, and he shows her something to help her put in context what earthly life actually is. And so that comes up in the poem. All that is made. And thank you for your attention. I appreciate it. All that is made. The trees were on the verge of rebirth, so sudden you'd miss it from one day to the next. Would be suddenly alive in it, the pale green bending open to reveal what we'd always suspected was the case, that every bright thing has at its heart a hiddenness it offers when you've just about stopped looking. In her 30th year, Julian was dying. No other way to describe the proceeding of events, the widening gap between two kinds of life, the one lived and the one remembered. And Christ came to where she lay, fevered and helpless, sat by her bedside in velvet robes, and opened his palm to show her a hazelnut, saying, "This is all that is made." I wouldn't know mercy unless it looked like this, and I'd mistake it for love, though that too is what it is. I understand if you're not prepared to believe in miracles. The hours passed from one invisible hand to the next, but Julian lived to 73 in the 14th century. Maybe life's little more than our own blindness easing. Look, he said, keep looking. How small and round our suffering. Thank you.
Thank you, Mai. Now we're going to welcome Kwame Dawes, and he's the author of numerous books of poetry and other books of fiction, criticism, and essays. His most recent collection is Surgetown, Peapound Tree Press, University, United Kingdom, 2023. Now, Kwame, I'm sorry, are you still George W. Holmes Professor, or you have a new title?
Emeritus.
What? Oh, all right. Okay, I'm sorry. I should have understood that. Yeah. Is it George W. Holmes University Professor of English Emeritus and Gunnar Lushi, editor of Prairie Schooner. He teaches now at Brown University, and you could tell them what your new title is at Brown University. Personally, I think that was a wonderful switch to make, being a dyed-in-wool East Coaster. He teaches in the Pacific MFA program and is series editor of the African Poetry Book Series, director of the African Poetry Book Fund, and artist directory of Calabash International Literary Festival. He's a chancellor of the Academy of American Poets and a fellow of the Royal Society of Literature. Dawes is the winner of the prestigious Wyndham Candleman Award for Poetry and was a finalist for the 2022 Newtown International Prize for Literature. In 2022, Dawes was awarded the Order of Distinguished Commander class by the government of Jamaica. He is the Poet Laureate of Jamaica and will be through 2027, and his term started in 2024. Let's welcome the amazing Kwame Dawes.
Thank you very much. Good to be here. I'm just timing myself. That's what I'm doing. I'm not texting anybody. Honestly. Here we go. Okay. So earlier I met Michael. I don't think Michael is around. And
This is Michael.
yeah, it was you. Right, there you are, Michael. Good. It was good talking to you.
You too.
And you did ask me what I was writing, what I wrote recently.
Yeah.
And I just sort of muttered some nonsense to him. Because I said, I'm always writing, blah, blah, blah. So it was like that. And so I thought, I just wrote this poem this morning. So I thought, I just want you to know that I did write a poem. So I'm going to read the poem that I wrote this morning. And I write, just to let you know that I'm not lying all the time, only sometimes. It's called Misen or Misen. That's how new it is. I wake in these gray mornings, and my world is a mist of grains. What I consider sight is a promise of a certain darkness. I'm afraid to ask my brother when it began, his sightlessness, and how it began, this slow descent into shadows. Since your last, I keep thinking of the earth at the top skin of hidden things, as the top skin of hidden things, and the word bore is making constant excavation in me, my own body a kind of mizzen, a word alien to me until it becomes second meaning to me. The place where you tell me the water below is in dramatic hurl and whoosh, and the heavy sea slices into cliffs. A month ago, in the grand hall of book vendors, ticking with the desperation of lean and hungry poets, I met the prophetess who arrived in a swirl of fabric, her body hurling through the world, alive with its tinkle and whoosh. So how are you? She shimmered the way prophets do, demanding full well that the answer be light and more light. It seems strange incongruence in these times, especially the livid joy and expectancy in her brilliant onyx eyes, in the high bell of her voice. These are triumphant times, she said. Perhaps for the prophetess this was true, I thought, and regret my soft, indulgent smile, but what I know is that since then I wake with a body warring with the sweetness of my ancestry, a kind of prophetic cry. The Lebanese prophetess held my hands and told me, my ancestors will look after you. They will bless you, for you have blessed me, their child. And I know I did not know how to say my gratitude, though I devoured her beaming face through the mesh stretched over my corneas. It was my old dream of a bruja taking my face in her hands, blowing into my eyes and promising peace. Now I wake in shadow, and yet there is nothing to lament, a kind of joy. So that's that poem.
Beautiful.
What do they say when you read a poem like that? You say, true story, like true. Completely true. I'm going to read some poems from Sturgetown. Sturgetown is a village in the hills of Jamaica, in the parish of St. Anne, and it has been the home of my sort of ancestors. I'd say sort of, but it goes back about 3 or so generations. And it was established in around 1835, 36 as a free village, a village in which former enslaved people created this municipality with some funding from philanthropists in the UK, in this case a man called John Sturge. And they formed this community, and this has been a community that has continued. They left the plantation and built a farming community up in the hills. So that's the name of the collection, and it's a way for me to enter into memory, into past, into ancestry, and into a connection. So the first poem I'll read takes me to Ghana, which is where I was born. And on my mother's, so that Sturgetown is my father's side. Ghana, Accra, Kumasi, and Cape Coast, where this poem is set, is on my mother's side. My mother is Ewe and Fanti, and of course my father was Jamaican. The prodigal converses with the land. 1, Cape Coast. I am a city in translation. What I say to you is not in the language I carry. You will never understand the pidgin of my soil because you are always a foreigner. It is true that your grandmother's bones are interred in me, and I know you hoped that by returning to me you would hear her speaking, but you must know that even more desperate people have come asking for some sound to carry through. At least you know that I was named by white people, and they have left the noise of atrocities here. so that when those who come back year after year, instead of speaking of the drama of the ocean beating against the shore, instead of the shouts and songs of the fishermen dragging their catch across the dark sand for the women to collect and take to the market, instead of the clubs, the high life, the scent of bread baking at night, instead of the deep forests that reach the edge of the sea, the way the sun sets on Elmina, instead of this, all they can talk of are the ones who were collected here and taken across the waters, only to return as interlopers, people with foreign tongues who do not understand our language of centuries. We are the Akan. We are warriors, the broken companies of the Ogwa. This means nothing to you. What you know is the smell of soap and algae in the gutters and the way the brine in the lagoons thickens the air, the addiction of akara, and the tart heat of pepper, and the tomba of the mortar and pestle, the familiar sounds of heart and hearth. These are the things that you will talk about, places of nostalgia and home. But all places know themselves by the blood that has been shed there, the sadness that will always haunt the laughter of this place. Here is that church where your mommy, the Pentecostal woman, found her own Jesus, saw the coil of a python on the heavy shoulder of her daughter, your mother, and they cast out the demon curse on her, freed her from what would have consumed her. She was young then, the age of your youngest daughter, but she remembers. Chocho remembers. 2. Kwame. I know that the invention of memory, the silence before memory is made, the imagined comfort of language, though failing every time, though betraying my inner head and liver, is what I have, is what we all carry. I lied when I said I found the translation of this land into something like a nation or home or comfort or the spirits of ancestors. I lied and still I will say to you who stand at the gates of this village, tell Mommy, her grandson, the one she teased, tell her he's asking to be let in. And he is craving her fresh baked bread. Thank you. This is a poem for my father called Welsh. My father studied at your university at Oxford, where he was also at Oxford to do his undergrad at the time. And he spent a lot of time drinking and partying, apparently. And there's a photograph of him in a pub in Wales, of all places. And it's a fascinating photograph because there he is, a black man, and then everybody else is, they're these white people, and they're drinking and they're having a good, they like royally look very happy. But what was strange about it was that they were picked, some of the people in the photograph had dark faces, like they were in it looked like they were in minstrelsy, but then I realized that they were coal miners. So I guess they really connected. So here's the poem, and it's a funny, well, I think it's funny. You might find it a bit macabre. Welsh for Neville. You smoked a pipe, loved to stare in the camera's eye, made of it a twinkle or a wink. Those were the days of gin and tonic, the days when you believed in the magic of your fertile brain, when they hailed genius in your body, the mastery over bat and ball, the lithe, youthful walk, the muscles alert, full of suicidal daring. That was you. So perhaps it was no surprise when in 1949, in a small pub in Wales, where the regulars were so cold-stained they called themselves niggers. They thought a man who could play the piano like you, drink like you, run 100 yards like you, and fill your pipe with aroma like you had to be at least as good as the worst Welshman. And that was good enough for the twisting, twirling Shakespearean rag. Fa-la-li-la, fa-la-li-la-la-la. Oh, boy. What a little gin and tonic can do. And here's a reggae poem called Recall. Reggae's insinuating bass line cleaves to my bloodline. All is quiet under southern skies. Tomorrow I'll go blind for what I have not seen. It is a price I must pay. Tomorrow my last laugh will scatter over the dry leaves of live oaks shedding. I have heard no ragamuffin in months. I have forgotten the role of my waistline, the offbeat skank. It is like grief, this emptying, this silence, waiting for the rush of stones. I'm dreaming now in a smooth southern drawl, and we have found the muddied bodies, eye sockets and teeth dragged from the swamp by FBI agents in their clean white shirts and walkie-talkies. The reeds are unmoved. They swing back in place like rubber. I've been watching too much Mississippi Burning and Eyes on the Prize. Still, it's true that they lynched someone in Florence a month ago. On the roadside, a rusting Cadillac, once green, now chewing grass sloppily from its gaping windows, and bullet-riddled skin ticks in the heat. I am dreaming in blue notes, gospel calling, responding, sing-talking, yes, swing-talking my way to salvation. Oh, pipe me back to my familiar earth, for it's slipping slowly from me. It's funny, there are a number of the poems, thanks, older poems. I wrote that poem while I lived in South Carolina in the 90s. Okay, here's the title poem for the collection called Sturgetown. It's in two parts. One, in this fantasy of homecoming, the termites, out of respect, have vacated the elegant homestead of delicate filigreed panels and jalousies that speak of a century ago, and allow the trees to crowd in and shelter the graveyard, the pimento barbecue on the porch until the return. Of course, the house is rotting. The squatters abandoned it for better walls, and the prodigals have not returned. Two, for too long I spoke of return, a kind of prodigal fantasy, although face set against the sun, I had abandoned the waywardness of the failed son. My father is long dead, and I was faithful to the last. Still, post-colonial that I am, I built my own myth of departure, set aside the romance of the exile for the pragmatics of family and mission. Return was to what might have been had my ancestors lived longer, had they held on to the cottage on the hill, to Sturgetown's pimento barbecue decks, the green of an island's history, marching along the narrow paths of the enslaved, trotting to the cane fields. I return as one who visited once. Still, my heart goldens in warmth to see the gray slab with Dawes etched into stone. Thank you. It bruises too. I think I was driving years ago, well, a few years ago, from Lincoln, Nebraska to Seattle. I did that trip a few times. My daughter was at school there. And when you get into the Rockies, there are points at the Rockies where you do some hairpin things, you know, you're moving, right? But it's fascinating because you can see like miles away.
Yeah.
But it takes you a while to get there, right? Because you're going. And I began to imagine pilgrimages and walks. And so this poem comes out of that moment of seeing and becomes something else. The poem is called It Bruises Too. The haunting has killed before. Find words to describe the stone heavy in the bowels. Before us are the disasters we make of our lives. I am a clumsy journeyman. You find me on a road that curls across green plains. You'll see me with my staff from many miles away. We follow the contours the mountains make of the road until hours later, after 2 light showers and a burst of sunlight, we meet. I tell you I'm doing penance and swear that these words I am speaking are the breaking of a long fast, and my voice sounds alien even to me. You ask why I wince like that. The silence, I say. It bruises as well. And after the elation of this meeting, we part, you towards the light, me into the gloom you left behind. A poem for Bob Marley. I got 3 more poems to do, just in case you're counting. And so I'll do 2 poems, 2 Bob Marley flecked poems, and then one other poem. Yeah, that's what I've got. Okay, so this is the first one. I don't know if you know this, but Marley, in his last few months, he had cancer. He suffered from cancer. Something that we didn't know anything about, to be honest. I think nobody knew, frankly, in the public eye. This, of course, was social media and everybody getting in your business. But then we got rumors that he was not well, and then the stories came out that he was looking for a cure in Mexico and so on. Finally, he ended up in Bavaria, where there was a doctor who thought they could fix him and rescue him. The stories that all his entourage went there, and it became a very disturbing place for him because they were all sort of waiting for him to die. And finally, his mother, his wife Rita, and his then lover and partner, Cindy Breakspear, went and took him out of Bavaria to Florida, where he died. So here's the poem, At Anchor, the Real Situation, for Bob Marley. Bavaria, October 1980. In the brilliant morning on a fishing boat, a dying man dreams of Jamaica, of the murmur of soft waves. Here, at anchor, apart from the ordinary lull of the easy tide, there is, at last, peace. He cannot know that in 7 months the weight of wool on his shoulders will be lifted, that in the soft gloom of a German chalet in deep January he will anticipate with terror his death, rewriting his theology of eternity, shadowed by the swirling clouds, the bickering sycophants, the friends who will not stop to pray, frightened as they are by the end of the crusade. Here he already knows that his last songs conveyed the weight of a man sitting by the sea, staring out into its slithering metallic green and imagining his words as prayers for a truth unfettered by the promise of another morning. The sea is so unremarkable that it becomes an exquisite maw. What a lofty standard of beauty that is for a song. Thank you. And then this poem's called Work, and it references Bob Marley's song Work. An epigraph that I use is 9 days to go working for the next day. We Ja people will make it work. Every day is work. It is easy to slide over the word work. Take it to mean what it isn't. Look at this man's hands. Look at the toughness in his fingers, the way his nails darken at the edges, and the way his skin is marked by old scars, the way his palms are leather tough, a grater of skin. If he drags them over your arm, those hands still remember the grooves where the blisters would settle and then harden to toughness from holding the handle of the clumsy seed planter, bouncing on the uneven furrows, planting. Sometimes it's easier to know that on the plantation out there on James Island, every morning, 7 days a week, a bell sounds out, just 30 minutes left before you line up by the fields to start to sweat all day, to pay rent on that wood shingle and mud chimney that they've given you. And if you miss a day, your family will lose shelter. That is work, keeping the wolves from your door. The left foot following the right, the sickle swinging, the dirt on your skin and the shadow over you when the script runs out. Work is always behind, always owing somebody something. Payment in June for debt from December when the cold reached into your gut, held you down. Work is one pair of shoes each season, grown man barefoot all summer long, and mules for the freeze all winter. Work is the crocus sack stained with dung and sweat, smacking your back filled with cotton. Work is the day you think you're grown enough to run, to stop the constant stepping back, only to find that big-bellied white man with his straw hat, overalls, cigar in his mouth, and black-ass nightshades with a shotgun in his hand saying, "Here are some stripes, nice stripes to help you work better. Now you get 3 meals a day, uncle. Now you get a bed to sleep on, boy. Now you got something to live for." Work is the time you spend trying to eat away the time you owe. Work is all a man has for sure, and work tells you that nobody is going to give you something for nothing. Work is like breathing, but after a while, there is no more breathing left, and every breath is a loan, and your pocket is empty, and you will never pay it back. Work is all a man has, and work is nothing at all. Work, 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 work. Thank you. All right, finally, I'll read a poem called On Hearing News of Another Black Man Shot. And I want us to remember that protest comes out of lament and pain that is not invented, but is lived. And there's a moment where we need shelter. I grew up, when I was in Jamaica, I was a student. There was a family that I became close to that lived in a town called Clonmel in St. Mary. And they invited me once just to visit. I went to visit them because one of my close friends was their kid. And it was a moment of very great difficulty. I had a lot of loss and so on and so forth. And it was so calming to me that I started to escape to Clonmel anytime I could. And I would always arrive unannounced, and they would say, "Oh, Kwame, the room is ready." And I would go in the room. They were just farmers. They were just, hustling a living, but they would have this room and then in the morning, always, it would be steamed fish and milk and bread. And I'll do that for a couple of days. They won't talk to me. They'll just ask me how I'm doing, and then I'll go back. And I keep that always in my mind of the shelters that we can create for each other. So this poem is not about Clonmel, but it's about a shelter that we need. And I'll repeat the title, On Hearing the News of Another Black Man Shot. I ask you for the lemon green room, The room where color unfolds, leaving a soft and comforting green over the worn books and discarded folders. Let me describe this green as the light filtering through the shade of leaves. Imagine a bowl of green olives or grapes in their variable shades. This is the green I'm thinking of. Or a green that settled after an explosion, or the multi-voice shades of my island. I must be clear about this, for green is as fickle as the bodies we live in. I will sit there dappled as if there are trees filtering light over me. Over there, a lime tree, stunted by the entanglement of its roots in the pot, smiles sheepishly in the corner. How addictive is the green shade that covers me now, without it. I become a creature shuddering for the caress of tender light. I am feeling the news, the chattering noises, the illogic of another black body broken by bullets, by the heaviest of sorrows. Forgive me, friend, for asking you to take me into your verdant back room. Forgive me if I sit quietly in the corner, rocking, hoping, maybe for earth to hold steady my vegetable self. Thank you very much.
Very good. I want to ask everybody, if anybody has questions that'd like to ask the poets, raise your hand, and I'll call on you. Anybody with questions? No? Do I see somebody asking? No? Okay. That's all right. I am going to ask you to raise your hand if you signed up to read in the open reading. Okay, all right. So why don't we do that first, read in the open reading, and then we'll let you talk to Kwame and Maya, and they'll sign your books if you buy a book. Cynthia has the books for sale at the table. Cynthia, let me have that paper, honey.
Pleasure, everybody. Thank you, Maria. I have to go.
Bye, Dolly.
Wonderful.
Okay. Michael, I'm sorry, I can't read your last name. Sorry, dear.
Yeah, that's okay.
Blind as a bat. Go ahead.
Okay.
Michael?
I always like to read what I've just written because I feel like I have more energy that I just put into it because I just wrote it. When Maya, when you were reading that quote about all is well, I actually wrote this very, very short poem. Thinking of that, I thought it was a beautiful quote, all is well. So I might be getting the quote wrong, but I'm going to paraphrase it and then I'll read the short poem. So the quote is something like, all is well, and all is well, and all manner of things shall be well. And who said that again?
Julian of Norwich.
Okay.
Julian of Norwich.
Okay. I have heard the quote before. So this is what I wrote. It is the well, the steady, composed well. So still, life is born from the steady well. May I be a well that can pass on goodness. I long to be a well and pass on my water drops, and to have a dawn for you, my children, just like the light that dawned me. That's all, thank you.
Thank you, honey. Next is Bob Rosenblum.
The poem's title is In the Night Kitchen. It's after a book by Maurice Sendak, a book for children. In the Night Kitchen. Our daughter sent photos of her and Max, our grandson, using cookie cutters to shape pieces of dough into stars. Our Christmas trees and Santas. But the Santas, she tells us, break. Max learns how he could be self-sufficient around the house. He learns uses for sprinkles and icing. Though we're in New Jersey and they're on the road headed for Fargo to see his Midwestern grandparents, we say we will be over soon. If he's baked it, we will eat it. His father says he's covered by benign child labor laws, getting paid union scale through the Bakery and Tobacco Workers Union, the good old BTWU, a living wage that's all grandparents can ask. Our daughter says our grandson is really the boss in the relationship. She's the employee working long hours into the night. We, of course, know the feeling.
Wonderful. Lisa Banta.
First, I want to say that I'm fairly new to writing poetry, but something came to me a couple months ago, and I'm actually going to read two poems because they go together. My father passed away 2 weeks ago, and in January I had written this poem. I must have had the feeling that maybe this was his last Christmas. On a bitter cold winter day, I can feel the warmth of the sun on my face as I gently help my 95-year-old father to pivot in his walker and grasp the car's removable handbar with his right hand. Little me, 95 pounds, 68 years old, I support the weight on his left side as he strains to lower himself into the passenger seat. With great effort and a loud, painful grunt, he picks up his left leg with his feeble arms, turns his body forward in the seat, and then does the same with his right leg. He breathes a sigh of relief, smiles as he leans back in the seat, a welcome respite from his 20-foot walk to the car. So as I put his walker into the trunk, I notice him trying to grasp the seatbelt, but his stiff muscles can't grasp it. I sit in the driver's seat, reach over to buckle the seatbelt he is holding around his arm. We are off, he says. This is the first time he has left assisted living since last Christmas. As we drive, the sun glints off the pristine new fallen snow, shimmering on the tree branches. Snow enshrouds the earth, reminding of us all that is chaste as it blankets us in its divine white embrace. The cloudless sky is a deep grayish blue. Little streaks of light, pink, begin to line the horizon as we drive south on the highway at 4 p.m. The sun blinds me. To see, I have to cover it with my hand. How I wish it could have blinded me to the pain of life. My father sits quietly. There is noise of rushing wind and vehicles on the highway, but even with his hearing aids, he can't make conversation. Fortunately, we don't need words to communicate. Our connection to one another is beyond words, born out of deep suffering for most of our lives, and in the past 5 years, new respect and deep love. The pink hues of the brilliant sunset light the horizon as we near our destination, my daughter's home. As I turn towards him, my eyes fill with tears. I know this may be my last Christmas with him. Fear rises in my soul. Am I strong enough to survive another loss? And the second poem, if you could give me another minute. Did any pages fall out as I was walking? Now I'm embarrassed. Here it is. Okay. This one is called the Maple Box. I stand sweating in the sultry August sun as it beats down relentlessly, choking the life out of the dying yellow green grass. Only a few large leafy dandelions and encroaching crabgrass have taken root and thrive in the dark, parched earth. I swat at the yellow jackets that are buzzing around my legs, searching for nectar in the yellow flowers of the dandelions. A much louder buzzing sound, the rhythmic high-pitched whine of the male cicadas drowns out the voices of the people around me. I stand stoically next to a maple box, laying in the humid heat on a blue blanket in a flat field devoid of greenery and life, filled with rows upon rows of flat rectangular plates. I look away and notice another field of lush grass, shrubs, wildflowers, and trees with graceful bows. An inviting field interspersed with large white and gray stately stones. The tree branches hang low over the stones, standing and protecting not only what grows on the ground, but also what lies beneath the earth. The verdure of grass, wildflowers, and trees live in harmony with each other, giving each other space to thrive in the earth that is dry, but not sun-baked and lifeless. I am drawn to the greenery of that lush space, but I cannot move. I must stand in the stifling sunlight with the people gathered around the shiny maple box with two bronze handles on each side. Though I try to suppress my sorrow, a few tears trickle down my cheeks as I lay a rose on top of the box and stare at the deep, dark earthen hole where the box will soon find its final resting place, the box that holds the body of my 11-year-old brother. My heart aches. Why can't he be put to rest in the beautiful meadow, in the field of flourishing foliage with dignified granite stones? My father tells me there is no space in that lush field of stones. There can be no stone marker on this desolate, barren field. A half-century later, in August, I visit this lifeless place and see row upon row of leveled grave markers in seemingly endless straight lines. I walk until I find that flat, faded bronze plate with my brother's engraved name. I lay down upon his baked earthen resting place and let my tears flow.
And our last open reading poet is Francis Lombardi.
I'll be quick so we can. You'll humor me with two morsels. First is called Mamita. When the crossing guard shouts, "Take your time, Mamita," I want to say, "I'm nobody's mama," but instead just smile and thank her. One Friday before Mother's Day, my students came back from break with a big bouquet. Yellow chrysanthemums, pink carnations, and one red rose. "Happy Mother's Day," they sang, and when they asked me how many kids I had, I said 3, compounding my lie by adding, they live far away in other states, and no, I wouldn't be seeing them that Sunday, then feeling sorry that I lied, though I was glad to avoid those looks I get when I answer, "I have none."
Oh.
And one, I'm going to read this if you don't mind. It's very short, and it's called Raccoon. One frozen winter night, as I was driving on Grand, I saw a raccoon navigating a snow mound without hurry or fear, his mask still intact as he disappeared to who knows where. I wondered if he were as frightened of Paterson as people from other places are, and how he would survive the coming months, like the beggars with their cardboard signs, if somebody might hurt him, hunt him down just for kicks, or a car strike him. The moment I saw him, I felt I wasn't really here on my way to work, but somewhere on the moon, fascinated by such a creature that such a creature ended up in this city, but I felt afraid of him and for him, a thing of the wild, walking on the streets of Paterson at night.
Thanks, everybody. Let's say that the two featured poets will go sit in that room, and people will bring you their books to sign if people have bought books, okay? So that's what we'll do. Let's give another round of applause for Maya Popa and for Kwame Dawes and for all our open reading people.